Well, that'll be a nice image for people to see when they open it anyway. So we're on now.
Right. Evening.
Evening to you too. Do you want to
How
start
you
with?
doing?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, you've had a harsher week than I, so I thought you could start with. Yeah.
it's been like 3 weeks of that at this point.
Ah.
Um, End of my wife's pregnancy has been difficult.
Mm,
But end is in sight now. We've got a scheduled induction next Sunday. So at least that's nice. I can just, not go to work that day and we go into hospital and then we come home with a baby. Sounds great.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Most of the stress was simply just not knowing what's going to happen. So having that surety is quite nice,
Mm,
actually. Pretty happy about that.
yeah.
What about you? You're dressed all fancy. What's going on?
Well, this is what I wear to work every day.
Ah,
So
right, there it is. Yep.
yeah,
Can
yeah,
see the logo.
yeah. I got compliments when I first walked into the office wearing this. So yeah, yeah. Step
Oh,
ups. It's so my son's at my parents' because it's a public holiday, and so I had a full day at work instead of my usual half day.
mm.
And so I got to work first, and it's like, I don't know the code for the gate. Hello, I should have called to find out when you'd be here. But that was easily enough solved. And then I had a chat to one of the other guys, well, the only other guy apart from the boss who showed up today, because public holiday. Um, and something that struck me about that was that we were both people who were working on ourselves in a reasonably active way. Like he'd had a period where he worked through a whole bunch of stuff, and then he had a time where he nearly died, and in the process of it, saved some kids from drowning. And if he hadn't been working on himself and getting himself together, getting a bit fit, that sort of thing, getting out of drinking on weekends and so on, when that happened, he wouldn't have been able to. He would have been standing by, being traumatized watching kids die instead of being there dealing with it and coming out of it like, okay, well, that was bad, but I'm just going to live life because if anyone who gets in my way now in a sort of in the good way, not the aggressive way, in the polite to anyone until they get in polite, and then it's like walk off with a middle finger. I'm not dealing with this shit type attitude.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, so he's been working on himself, and I've been working on myself through this, and like we've both seen the results of that. And something I thought would be good to start this with. The girl I've had a couple of dates with is overseas at the moment, and in planning when we would be able to see each other, I over the before she left the country, I mentioned this, and so she was like, "Oh, what's that? Oh, okay, I'll send you a link." And so she started watching them. So hi,
Oh no.
yeah. So I thought going over some
Maybe
of
you're
the
still just all those episodes we did, like working up the courage to go and talk to someone and planning the dating process and this girl I met. Nah, she's can be listening to it all. That's great.
yeah. So I thought that a short
My
thing
wife does
about
not listen. My wife does not listen, which gives me a lot of
she's got you there.
comfort.
It's like one of the things I was
Okay,
thinking
yeah, fair
about.
enough.
It's like this girl's gonna know parts of me very well if she listens to a lot of these while she's overseas, and I'm a little bit worried because there's been a lot of opening up about things and dealing with deep issues that's happened through these.
Mm.
And I don't have any sort of particular worries, but it's like someone who you will know getting to know you in that way, and you're not there to gauge it and react as they do. It's a little bit worrying, but
Too late.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And frankly, the fact that it's worrying in that way is no hindrance to me. It's like just
Mm.
because it's scary doesn't mean it's not right. and so I wanted to go over the why we're doing this a little bit to add some context and for new listeners.
Ah, okay, sure. Do you want to take that away? Do you want me to?
I think I've got a spiel started in my head, and yeah,
Well,
you,
prepared? Go for it.
I'm probably less tired than you, so I'll see if I can
Oh,
carry the
believe me,
show.
I can go. I've actually been pretty firing on all cylinders today, so
Oh,
I got a
good.
lot. But
Yeah, we've got your stuff to deal with too, because this isn't just about me.
oh, I'm okay. I've more just had things on my mind and stuff I want to do,
Mm.
rattling back and forth. Yeah, I did the big spiel at the beginning and not too long ago as well. So if you want to
Mm.
explain
So
why it is we decided to do this.
the start was you saying our conversations are so interesting, and I watch lots of podcasts, and I think that other people would get something out of some benefit out of watching us have these conversations. So we should do it. And I was like, yeah, sure, sounds fun.
I don't think I sounded quite that manic, but thank you.
Oh no, I'm the manic one. Yeah. Uh,
But no, you're definitely right. There's very few times where you meet someone in which you have not just, oh, I can have a good conversation, but there's something unique about it.
hmm.
And I find in our conversations that we are very opposed in a lot of ways. If you look in public discourse, you're not going to find a person like me and a person like you talking because you're very, go into too much details, but you're very down the line, prove evidence kind of thinker, but you're able to walk outside the lines at the same time and apply that. Whereas I am very much an off the cuff, here's a thing I thought of, isn't it brilliant kind of thinker. And those generally are very opposed, fighting in the public space. Um, and it's something I really value about our conversations and this show. And it's something that I want to do with a show that I'm going to do on my own soon. I can find time between crying children 1 through 3. An embrace of holding simultaneous conflicting opinions.
Hmm.
Of we're in a culture where everything is one or the other. And I think there's in a incredibly polarized place, there's an unbelievable value in someone who, or a conversation, which is able to be a foot in both worlds.
And there's power to that because
Mm,
I
it's
think the
transcendent.
way Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying, the evolutionary biologist, husband and wife team, I got their book, and one of the things they pointed out was that where you see an apparent paradox of here is a fact and here is another fact, and these make no sense together, it's like you don't know something. There's something you're
Mm,
missing there. At least something. There's probably a whole lot. And the example they gave was in the tribes of Madagascar, they would have a big feast every year, like a big feast, and they have regular famines. So why the hell would you waste so much food on this big celebration and feast when you've got famines? And it's like, at first that sounds like a massive paradox. Like, why the hell would you do this? But the bit that was missing in that one that they used to explain the concept or the metaphor is that these regular famines mean that if your population grows up a bit and then you have the famine, people starve to death. So when you've got the excess food, isn't it better to have a tradition of using it up so that when the famine hits, you just have a very small feast instead of someone or several people starving to death? Like, that's preferable. Yeah, that makes perfect sense now. But that without that bit of missing information of how it works, it doesn't make any sense. And I was dealing with technical things like that today at work. Like, this works like that, and this works like that, and that doesn't make any sense. I'm missing something in the physics here. And
I can't stop thinking about this in terms of cultural ideas,
mm,
particularly political. It I find it fascinating that there are certain things you can learn that change your perspective on human activity in general. And one of them is the social status game. Like we've talked about that a bunch. Once you understand that human behavior seems so much different. You go to your workplace, you go out to a cafe, and you can just see it. You can see this person standing like this. I'm being social dominant. You can see it in their eye contact. You can see it in the way that they talk to other people, if they elevate them or put them down, what they buy, what they wear, who they talk to. It's like a frame change. And another one of these ideas is the personality profiles and political ideologies. When you realize that a large portion of political ideas is simply an expression of innate personality, which is partly from nature and partly from nurture, then all of a sudden you see a big array of people expressing my particular flag was kicked up here, my particular flag was kicked up here, I'm all for this thing, I'm all for that thing. And the truth, the most optimal way forward is a compromise. And then all of a sudden, no particular one political opinion or policy is a good idea anymore. It's all an art of balance. There's a greater idea that can unify two facts, positions, problems. And when you don't see that greater frame, they seem to be fundamentally opposed. A historical or cultural idea of this would be like the science and religion thing, which was religion is all about moral and ethical claims, and apparently we believe factual claims about the origin of the universe, and then science is all about factual claims, and they must be contentious and disproving each other. And then you have the higher order thing of like, we don't understand or think in facts, we think in stories. And the reason that these things are integrated is that science grew out of monasteries, of the church. And these things are not fundamentally opposed. It's that thing of a fact doesn't tell you how to interpret it or whether or not you should do it. You know, you could design all kinds of scientific experiments that will tell you truths about the universe that you should not do. You know, like some of the things that the Japanese soldiers did to war captives. Those were scientific experiments. And in terms of pure scientific ethic, then why shouldn't we figure out why this happens? But any person could tell you that you shouldn't do that. Science can't answer that. It's probably not a great example, but the point is there's always a greater perspective in which things are interlinked. The idea of there aren't choices but trade-offs. And I think you're right that it's not just cultural ideas or political ideas, but even physics problems. We live in a weird soup of math where everything's connected.
I love the concept that certain ideas can't be expressed and handled accurately, or yeah, it's hard to handle certain ideas and harder to discuss them without the right language. And certain spoken languages are good at certain things, like to pull a few stereotypes out, French is apparently good for romance. I don't know that, but stereotype to prove the point.
There's probably some truth to it, yeah.
Yeah, but then like math is the language of describing physics. And like until people learned how to apply math to physics, we couldn't describe it. Like take away numbers, take away measurement. How do you describe anything? Like thing drops when I let go. Okay.
Yeah.
So what?
Well, the same goes for actual words.
Hmm.
These are things that we developed over a long time. Like the idea of subconscious.
Infinity.
Like
Yeah.
that's that's a
Zero.
great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are concepts that had to be developed over long periods of time. They're not things that we just innately knew.
Hmm.
The words are the greatest tools and weapons we ever created, by far. But if you don't have that frame of reference, then
Yeah.
well,
And so to bring that back full circle to what I started this with about the point of these conversations, it's to discuss ideas, not as political grandstanding of this is what we should do, but exactly the opposite in a sense of I have no idea. Let's throw some ideas around and discuss them, and we will be wrong. That's one of the key
yes, I
points
was
we've
just going to
discussed
say
before. Yeah.
that was your demand. Is we demand the right to be wrong.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this in particular today of wanting to be a public person and wanting to say things, and immediately you can hear the well, you're not an expert in this, so how can you comment on it? Um, I don't like the appeal to experts only. I think that's a really, really great way to centralize power, and only we can say what the truth is, kind of thinking. Some people who spend their lifetime studying a thing can make claims that, with relative accuracy, are likely to be true. Not 100%, just that's not how even scientific knowledge works. But we know that a lot of what we think and say is, was it post hoc justification for our actions? That a thing happens, we do a thing, and then the speaking part of our brain goes, I did it for this reason. And then you say that, even with things you say. And I think in the modern world, we're not really okay with that idea. We like to think that we're in charge. So I said the right thing, or you said the wrong thing because you didn't think it through. And I think there was a place before we got all scientific where people would just say, I'm going to say a thing. I don't know what it is, and it's not me saying it. And then they'd say, oh, he's a prophet. He'd stand up and he'd go, these are not my words. I'm just a person and I make mistakes. But then thing comes out and people go, oh, it's wise. Subconscious speaking, whatever you want to call it. Discovery and creativity are things that are not thought through. And if ideas are only the realm of proven facts, then all you're going to have is a bunch of dusty old tomes.
Yeah.
If you can't play with things, you can't discover anything. And if you're never allowed to be wrong, you never learn anything.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're doing this in public. People do these things behind closed doors and then they publish, here's the truth, which isn't right anyway. It's just, here's what we think is relatively true enough for now until we're proven wrong. No one's right forever. They're just temporarily considered to be correct.
Yeah.
And there was the other half too, which was the totalitarianism problem.
That's why I'm quiet. I just noticed that my sound levels were low, and I thought I should check as to why. And so sorry that I've been quiet in the video up to now. Oh, that's a bit too loud. I forgot to do a sound level check before we started recording. I think that's better.
Well, the professional over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time I mention it, I seem to remember you in the show being like, "Oh yeah, that's why we did that. That's depressing." The totalitarianism problem. I think in our first conversation, I had a wee spiel about I'm really scared to speak publicly, as I think anyone should rightly be. But also, what am I scared of? Social rejection. Maybe in an interview someday, a boss is going to look at me weird or not give me a job. Maybe people on whatever social media app of the day get mad at me if I say a thing. There are worse consequences happening, but if I allow these things to prevent me from speaking, the future punishments for saying the thing that I wanted to say now would only end up being worse. These things do not progress in the direction of more freedom.
And that's on a personal and a social scale.
Yes, and then I become more of a coward because I'm not willing to say it to risk a weird look from people I don't know. I read enough things about totalitarianism and the Soviet Union to realize that if you don't speak when you feel you need to and say, hey, I think this thing is wrong, I feel like we're going in a dangerous direction, these are the things I'm noticing. When there's small social prices to pay, the social price will increase until it becomes legal price and eventually totalitarian cost. By the time you're willing to speak, the jackboots are at your door, and then what you say doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm just seeing the parallels to what you're saying there with the different stages on a social scale to the personal scale and relating it to my experience in my last relationship and like the determination that I've made since then that I wouldn't let that happen. I would say
that's a great connection. Yeah, you're being pushed. And at what point do you say no?
Yeah.
So I can see, the social state is like that too. It will push on the populace until the populace says no. And then it'll go, okay, here's the line. And then it'll be all right for a while. And then it'll try and push again. Whereas if you, as a citizen, or if all citizens collectively just go, oh, we'll just let it do what it wants, eventually it'll just push you into the ground. Same way that a person who is testing your boundaries, whether that's positively or negatively, will do that until you stop. And if you don't say stop, they'll push you so far that it'll destroy you.
And that doesn't have to be a competition. But like being a pushover means that like when you're interacting with someone, like in our conversation, like getting those tiny little feedbacks of, oh, it's your turn to talk, I'll shut up. Or it's my turn to talk, I'll have my turn and you'll shut up. And working out that dynamic cooperatively versus me just being silent whenever you have a word to say and only tentatively trying to speak when you let me. Like that doesn't work for either of us. And in a personal relationship, it's like if you have two people who want the best for each other and you're trying to work out where to set boundaries, if someone just pushes back whenever there's the slightest thing either, it'll be, who are you? You always do whatever I want. Who are you? Or it's, oh, I can walk all over you. Okay, I'll just do that then. And either of those, if you decide to say, actually, if you let yourself get pushed too far, then you'll either get yourself rejected by being a total spineless pushover, or you'll finally stand up and say, no, I can't do this. And then it'll be a big explosion because the pattern of never standing up for yourself is so entrenched at that point. So instead it's like, oh, well, what about this? And just the sort of work out the way, play the social game together and work it out together. And like I'm someone who needs to talk things out like this. I need to discuss ideas. Like there's a lot of people who I think, or I suspect, don't need that. They can have it or not, or people who like, I have no interest in discussing ideas at all. Why would I do that? but I do it
Yeah.
semi-compulsively. And
Yeah, it's
so,
hard for people like us to understand that a lot of people don't care about ideas at all.
yeah. And so,
It's just a personality trait. Like, sorry, no interest in ideas,
yeah.
no interest in beauty, no interest, like,
Mm,
yeah. But
yeah.
that's reality.
And so something been, that I have decided is important for me in a future relationship is that ability to say things and discuss ideas without uh, violent pushback is the phrase that comes to mind. A lot of what I say on here, as we've discussed before, isn't here is this carefully thought through statement I have of absolute truth. It's like, here is the thing that popped into my head that sounded like the right thing to say in this moment.
Yeah,
And
or
that's,
these are the words
yeah,
that are literally tumbling through my brain.
yeah,
I'm not thinking them before I even say them out
yeah.
loud. I
And,
think I think that was one of the points we made in an early episode
mm,
describing that we wanted to try and speak in the voice where we don't know what the next word is. We did a whole show on that, and
mm,
we have one back off that to sort of normal modernity style conversation. But every now and then we find that groove
mm,
again, and that discovery is what we're trying to do,
yeah. And then we get
which means we'll be
gems.
wrong.
Yeah. And we
Yeah,
will
we'll
be
rate
wrong.
great stuff, and then we'll get like
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the
Um,
the idea that you had of, I don't know if it's what you meant, but it's what sparked in me. Um, the idea of science being a story, like it came from religion. It's not that science is a is interpretable through the lens of ideology or something. It's no. Science is a story. We think in stories. We live stories. That is not just something that's nice to tell around a campfire. It is literally the way we think. And how many situations in life do you think of, oh, it's like this movie or that story or whatever? It's like, oh, it's not just that you're using that to make sense of a situation. It's like that is the only way you can make sense of those situations. And so
well,
science is another story that we use, but if it's the only story, then you end up not being able to think any more broadly than
well, I
that.
think the science as a story is a great example for. I'll get into that in a second. There's a good reason, but even what you said before about we're only able to think in stories. If you have a person who's trying to convince someone with data,
Mm,
statistics, and then someone other person who just says a story, the person with the story will win, even though they have no data to back it up
mm,
at all. But they'll get all the votes, they'll get all of the accolades, they'll get all of the respect. We're not interested in data, and the idea of science as a story, it came from religion, is perfect because science now isn't science anymore. Science says we know the truth about all these things, and you claim that you're wrong because we know. That's not science. Science was, that's interesting. Let's test it and investigate. Let's see what the data says. Let's do experiments, where now
mm,
it's become a story of
yeah.
we, the science, know the truth. And you must come to us to interpret the holy documents
Mm,
that are these journals that only we can read because we write them that way. Um, they're their own priesthood, they're their own religion, and they have their own sins as every religion does, and they're just not quite conscious of that yet. So I think it's an amazing example of the story of science being the thing that discovers the truth, morphed into we've discovered the
mm.
truth already because we've done science for a long time. So now we, the science, know the truth as doctrine. And now you've just got a whole bunch of different people preaching about what the truth is,
It's not even the
which
first
is,
time the truth has been found. Like I think it was in ancient Greece. I heard someone wrote this big text, like a magnum opus type thing, which was the full understanding of the world as it was at that time. Or it might have been even the Middle Ages, but for
Sounds like
I
a good
think
read.
yeah, for hundreds of years after that, every scientific endeavor consisted of references back to this body of work. So it held things up. Like you might think that, oh, get the sum total of human knowledge and it shall be a great flowering of new progress. Like, no, people stop thinking. They just say, okay, that is the truth. No, the thing you said is
Yeah.
wrong. This is the truth. And there's an example I love of, oh, I need to look it up in more detail so I can quote it more accurately, but someone who I think became a US president is quoted as saying, it is more likely that an entire county of people are lying, like outright lying, than a rock fell from the sky. Because
Mm,
the scientific truth at that time was that there are no rocks in the sky.
yeah.
Yet
Yeah.
this large
Until
town of
there
people,
was.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and like a lot of what is it? In a book I'm reading, he talked about the definition of a miracle in a technical sense, and he talked about not so much he didn't try and define it so much, although he ended up with a reasonable definition. He talked about the definitions other people had used, and like an event that one type of miracle was an event that violates the laws of physics as we understand them. And so, okay, by that definition, any discovery that goes against the current laws of physics is
Is a
by
miracle.
definition wrong because it's a miracle, because miracles don't exist, and therefore
But,
anything that
but
goes
that's
against
it.
the
That's brilliant because for centuries the Christian church had a message of miracles are real and they're a manifestation of God, and God is um, truth and knowledge bound in morality. And an investigation of those miracles, things that shouldn't exist, is an investigation of the deeper truth of existence. That's an ethic of science. Here's a thing that shouldn't happen. Let's investigate it. We'll discover something about existence.
that's where it came from. The natural
That's the
philosophy.
foundation.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
this
There are miracles and they are holy.
yeah, like
That's the same statement.
natural philosophy was a sub science of theology.
Yeah,
But
and the original universities grew out of monasteries.
yeah,
And until like 50 or 60 years ago, every single university was chaired. The managing department was the theology department. And they believed that all of the scientific endeavor was to better understand the universe that God made. Because if it was made by a being, it must have rules. And we're made like him, so we should try and find those rules. That's the whole point.
yeah.
And I think spirituality itself is the perfect example of the story of science becoming dogma. Because what's the story around that? We're all dead matter and there's no such thing as ghosts, there's no spirituality. It's not the case. Should we investigate that? No. All these people who've done the photography, who've done the harmonics research, the frequency stuff, all of that's outside of the scientific establishment. And they're not attempting to make it
Hmm.
scientific. It's not like these scientists being rebels. They're like hippies. Like, yeah, we don't need to prove anything to the man. We'll just do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Or the people you see who are going and exploring haunted places and capturing things. When is science going to look at that? Was
Hmm.
it Tesla who said the yeah, it was. It was Nikola Tesla said the year in which science investigates non-physical phenomenon, it will take humanity further than all of the years of his existence up until that point.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of what made him a bit of a oddity in human history, is he was playing in that space
Hmm.
in terms of like high frequency energy and harmonics. And then, was disappeared.
Yeah. It's funny. There's quite a few rounds of that sort of people with varying degrees of rigorous scientific background going into exploring things and finding things that they're not allowed to.
Mm.
Like one that I heard about on the radio, someone had written a song inspired by Frederick Wilhelm Reich, I think it was the guy who discovered
Cool.
Orgone energy. I might have his Wilhelm Reich, maybe not Frederick, but
Mm.
he discovered Orgone energy, and he just built these Orgone accumulators that would accumulate this mysterious energy and cure all ills. And okay, fantastical claims, but test these hypotheses. And he had his stuff, and then the FDA raided his buildings and burnt all his books and destroyed his machines. And it's like, hold on a minute, that's a bit of a
Yeah.
rash reaction for a crackpot. It's like, let the crackpot be a
There's
crackpot.
there's been a lot of stuff like that that's happened. Like, I try not to be too conspiratorial, but I have been in the past. And a lot of it revolves around, like, some guy came up with a brilliant invention, and him and everyone he know have been killed in mysterious circumstances, and everything on it was burnt and taken away.
And you don't even need a centralized conspiracy for that to be
Yeah, it's odd, to
conspiratorial
say
in
the
a
least.
sense. Yeah, it's like
Like, there's something wrong there.
all it needs is ideological alignment between those with power. You don't need any sort of, this is a guy who's doing something suspicious. It's like, oh, look at that crackpot, he's dangerous. And it's like, no more than that. It doesn't need to be anything more like that. People who think that people who experiment with other things are actively dangerous, in the sense of, in the same way that the COVID vaccines were decried as, no, were, you must only trust the science and must not investigate any other potential remedies because it will stop you using the ones that we say are the only ones that are the right ones. And it's like, what's science? Investigation and experimentation, and of course there are moral considerations,
this
but
not that science.
Yeah.
Like, that science is bad science. You're not allowed to look at that one. But this one's great because we say so.
Yeah, and it just so happens that the officially approved science is the one that makes certain people lots and lots of money.
Yeah, funny how that happens, eh? Almost
Yeah.
like their interests were aligned.
Yeah.
Mystery's mostly driven by that.
Mystery.
History.
History. Yes, aligned interests. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if people have aligned interests, they'll act in the interest of their own interests, and if they have power, and if power is given according to adherence to a pre-existing ideology, not in a do you tick all the boxes, but like, are you not a crackpot? Oh yes, we like you, we'll give you a job. Okay, yes, we like you even more. You work hard and you say the right things at the cocktail parties. Oh, I'll give you a promotion, I like you, and so on.
You're not a heretic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
Not a heretic. Yeah, burn the heretics. Yeah, I have so much problem with that term. Like, you believe in conspiracy theories. No, but I'm curious about them. The proven conspiracies, yeah, I believe in those, sure. Because there's plenty of them.
Yeah.
I'm conspiracy curious.
Yeah.
Something like that. You know? If we didn't play in these spaces so much, perhaps we wouldn't be sniffing around. When it comes down to it, the truth is, I think we don't know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
But we have a instinct, I think, and we're sort of playing with that instinct and trying to follow and see where it goes. Because if we knew what we were doing, it would be propaganda at that point. Think of any political commentator. I'm commentating for my side. Instant, dry, pathetic attempts. No one wants to watch that shit unless they just want their biases confirmed. And I'm really not hoping to attract people who want their biases confirmed. In order for something to be artful, it has to be discovery. You know, we're taking these wee journeys through our weird thoughts of the moment and seeing where it leads and pulling things out of thin air. And there's risk in that, there's danger, for sure. But I think that's why it's captivating. people sit and listen and go, no, he's on the edge of what he knows. He's struggling to find that next word, and then he brings it home. It's like, we love that sports analogy. I'm sure you can imagine it.
Yeah. It feels good. It just feels warm. It's like,
yeah, and it gives us the space to explore new things. Here's this weird idea I thought of that I haven't really thought through, but let's talk about it, kind of thing.
because the talking is the thinking.
I think a lot better in conversation. I'm not actually good at thinking in my own head. From my experience in my life, internally, without a conversation with someone else, it's pretty chaotic, and there's not much productivity there. I'm great at taking a whole bunch of input, and then in a conversation with someone, all of a sudden it clicks together, and I'm able to say a thing.
It's
So I'm like input machine all the time, and then in a conversation, it's like, whoa, manifest, output.
It's almost like that's how our brains have evolved, were designed, use whatever terms you like, to function. We're not built to function on our own in this little meat box.
Yeah.
We're built to be part of a flowing conversation, and we're built to specialize in some of it and pass it on. And even if you get two people who think very similarly, the act of passing ideas back and forward is part of the process of thinking. And I think that's one of the things that
thinking is internalized language.
Oh, the language came first. The discussion came first, and the thinking, and just like how the idea, the ability to read silently was a rare skill in medieval times.
Yep, that's down the chain. Going inside is the progress. We're not beings from the inside who grew out. Like, this is the whole thing about the expanding of consciousness and subconsciousness. We're digging in to the brain from the outside. Frontal lobe, we developed right at the front, right at the very front, and then we dig back and we dig down. We're not the whole piece. The ancient systems are not conscious. They're routine. So we developed as a part of the brain to communicate with other humans. Go there on that hunt, on this flank. That's a snake. Fire, something like that. Or, man, these mushrooms are good. I saw some shit. And we communicate and communicate and communicate. And somewhere in that process, we reference ourselves. And then that loop starts going of like, what am I? And then you come in.
And you bring some of it out. And then you go back in and you go into someone else.
I was trying to explain AI to my wife a couple of days ago. She's quite clever, but she grew up in an environment with no intellectual stimulation or information at all. So I was like, hey, what do you think about the whole AI thing? What's going on right now? She's like, I don't know. What is that? And I had to walk her through like what an AI is, how does it work, what is it really? And then that took 15, 20 minutes or so, and then she gave her opinion, which was informed and insightful and picked up a whole bunch of flags that most people don't, which is why I'm continually impressed with her, because she had no exposure to any of that. And all of a sudden she was like, this could be good, but it also could be bad in these ways, and hey, this is what we should look out for. Great. Anyway.
That's what I That's what I hope for in a relationship, or something that I hope for in a relationship, is that someone to bounce off, someone to do that dance with. And it's a dance that's unique to every couple, but it's something that we need.
in the process of describing AI to her, I think I described what might be a materialist perspective on consciousness. So I was describing a neural network. I'm going to assume our listeners understand the idea of, nodes and connections. You have input and then you have output. And I was trying to analogize, reference it to the human, analogize, thank you, reference it to the human mind. So, these wee nodes are effectively neurons, and we have input and output from a particular neuron to orders of magnitude of other neurons. And, signal strength from this one might be 20%, this one might be 40%, that one might be 70%. Some math occurs and output signal to this one's 12% and output signal to that one's 14%. And then the sum total of trillions or whatever of those calculations results in us. Anyway, I was coming down to, okay, inputs is the data that we give an AI, and to us, inputs are our senses. Hearing, taste, sound, smell, these are inputs to the human neural network. We start with a pretty plastic brain when we're babies. Everything's just signal input. And then over time, the neurons wire together and build pathways, just like a neural net. And then you have output, which would be speech, action, waving your arms around, hitting something. And I was describing that currently neural nets are small enough and simple enough that you press an input and it goes through a bunch of pathways and hits an output. Yes, no, whatever. But then there's if you imagine a single track. And I thought that what might be happening in us and what might one day happen in AI is if you have a big enough net that it's not just a straight line from input to output. You have input that comes in and then it like wiggles around, goes to a whole bunch of places and then output.
Or even even one that circles.
That's where I was going. Eventually you get to the point where inputs come in and then they run in a circle and then they come back and join into themselves again. And then you start having a self-referential loop within a neural net. And if the net's big enough and that loop is complicated enough and it's consistently running forever, would that not be experience of itself? Thought, constant loop in your brain of words coming back and forth, thoughts, images, patterns, projections, starting simple, what one might consider dreams, which is what our consciousness evolved out of in the first place. And what seems like the AIs are happening right now. They seem like they're dreaming, but not awake. And the idea was, as the neural net grows and gets more complicated, there's more branches for it to follow around. But the looping behavior, instead of input, output, stop, input, output, stop, it's continually going. And then all of a sudden, all you need is within that continuous loop to be a path of neurons that is representative of the self. And then all of a sudden, the loop is I. I do this, I do that, I'm going over here. And then it starts going this action, that action, conscious, choice. Still very deterministic vision, but I can see a connection there. Part of the reason that we look at lower animals and go, you're not conscious, but we are. Perhaps they don't have that loop. They're smaller nets, input, output.
I think this somewhat comes from my personal metaphysical philosophy, but only slightly, that there was...
I'm not saying I believe this. It's just what I was thinking. Yeah.
There was a interview that I saw half of between Jordan Peterson and a physicist, and he was like, I've heard some stuff that you've said, and I want to hear what you say more. And so most of it was Jordan Peterson just sitting there listening and asking the odd question. But this physicist had, I think he'd claimed that we would never get an AI to human level because an AI is algorithmic. It's a pattern, and patterns can propagate and they can build some more, but there's that seed is still all it's building from, and the
Oh,
inputs.
that's the he was the religious physicist, wasn't he?
Possibly. Yeah, he was saying
Yeah.
that there's something about humans that's non-algorithmic. Like, and we can see this somewhat in the way we think, in that most of our everyday life we can do without thinking about it much, or we can do it on autopilot. Like you can drive somewhere and not remember the trip type thing. Um,
That's algorithmic. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of our actions that are, and a lot of our social interactions and so on. But there's a spark of creativity. There's something else that, to a greater or lesser degree, we each have where we can modify that. We can influence the network. We've got a network overseer equivalent of ourself, and that would be the I looking upon itself, the
Hmm.
not the ego necessarily, but the you could say the soul. The
Okay.
There's something else, which in an AI is the human administrators. So there's still that link
That's a good
back.
analogy. Yeah, transcendence. We would be the transcendent AI. No, that's scary. That means we're their gods. Ugh. Um, you could make a case either way. Like you could make a pretty
Hmm.
convincing argument that, like, I could, in my mind, I've already got a bunch of things stacking up of ways that I could explain that with the sort of neural net model.
Hmm.
Um,
But then it's basically a speculation because, okay, how do you turn your speculation into a hypothesis that's testable so you can turn it into a theory?
yeah, I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
And I'll never claim to be. I'm philosopher, prophet, weird. I just say things and they seem to have value. And I'm not particularly interested in proving anything or actually being right about anything.
Hmm.
I'm going to speak. I'm going to hope it's valuable to other people because I think it's quite valuable from my own perspective. And people can take that as inspiration and go off and do their thing, prove it, not prove it, disprove it, whatever. But I am not interested in being the guy who's objectively right about anything.
It's more like the ideas or the thoughts won't let you alone until they're said and released. Like the pressure builds up.
Maybe, yeah, yeah. I find I get spun up, and then I can spit it out. It used to be the case when I was younger. I would see my grandmother once a week. We'd watch TV or whatever. We'd watch a show that we liked on a Friday night, whatever, and then I'd be like having monologues for 4.5 hours, and then she'd get tired, and then I'd go home because it was just my whole life was input, 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 chaotic thoughts that don't make much sense. And then I got someone I could talk to, and with each sentence, I was making sense for myself while also explaining. Like that thing of the greatest way to learn is to teach. I'm not. I don't seem to be capable of understanding things until I've said them to someone else.
I just realized that that's what I do too. As in, that helped me understand the pattern I've noticed in myself of tending to teach and monologue at people. That it's,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like that's what therapy is, as I've heard it described as well. That you're
effective.
professionally giving someone the chance to put themselves together.
I've actually had things like that. I remember going to see a counselor once, and I knew full well that like this person knows nothing about nothing. It was like a 19-year-old girl or something. It was like, "Hi, I'm a therapist." And I think I sat down. I spoke for about 15 minutes. She didn't say anything, and I was like, "I think I'm good." And then I got up and left. Like I laid everything out. oh, here's the solution. Cool, thank you, bye. Out. Like she just sat there. She didn't do anything. But that is a lot of the therapy process. It's just some people have so much built up obfuscation in their vision of themselves and the people around them that needs to be cleared away so they themselves can see their own problems, what they actually are, and then they can think of a solution. All the therapist is doing is being like, you're wearing 50,000 different glasses that distort your vision, and you're like got earmuffs on. We need to strip that away. No, that's not. To get your vision right, and then you can go, oh, this has happened, this is the shitty situation I'm in, it's because of that. And then they go, cool, I can fix that. I leave.
Yeah.
Unless it's someone who has legitimate mental health, in which case they don't really need a therapist. They need, I suppose, a psychiatrist at that point. A mind doctor.
Yeah.
Therapist is not a mind doctor. They're just someone to talk to who's good at helping you see the world.
I think mind engineer more than mind doctor. I remember Jordan Peterson describing it because it's not about
that's good. Yes,
helping them heal themselves so much. It's there's something that's not working in the system.
Yeah, but not a chemistry problem. It's it's a linguistic problem. They're like mind mappers. Like, I'm trying to map your mind so I can understand where you're at, and then I can tweak the map by conversation to the point where you can do it yourself, and then off you run.
And it's not like an engineer with a machine. Well, okay. It's like a guy taking care of a car he knows and loves. It's a two-way thing. It's a conversation with another party. It's not a, here is this damn machine, I need to get to work. Work, damn it. It's what's wrong, car? It's like, oh, you're sounding a bit off. Do you have a piston having an issue? Is spark plug a bit?
I don't like this analogy. I think
mechanics analogy.
About I don't feel like that works. I feel like maybe maths analogy would be better. Something about like a mathematical model, and you're sort of tweaking things here and there and watching it change and dialing it in.
Oh yeah, because I'm doing some of that at work.
Way out here, you've got these way outlining errors. We need to figure out what signal is creating this noise. We need to trim down the noise so it's more signal.
That's what I was doing today at work.
This bit.
Not that so much, but the program I've been working on, it makes a bunch of lines and graphs, and they all mean things. And it's like the boss and I will sit there and look at the lines, and it'll be like, why does that curve that way? That's weird. It shouldn't curve that way. Oh, wait, it's following that line. Oh, these two lines are curving together. Like two mass flows. It's like, well, that's curved, and that pressure is curved that way in that graph, and that mass flow is straightened that one. Oh, okay. Of course, because that's a parabolic relationship relative to that approximately linear one. Okay, that makes sense. And that one's linear relative to that one. It's the same line, just in different places representing different things in the system. Okay, that makes sense. But why the hell is that one doing that weird thing over there? And you're looking at the output.
It's like working from output. Yeah. Here's broken code. Fix it. Like, run. Error. Okay. Why this error? Run unit test. Why this? So this is going wrong. Right, let's fix that. Run. Okay, right. And the person's running is like going into the real world and coming back and going, this happened. What do we do now? And obviously, background experience helps, but yeah, I think that's a good analogy. You're debugging minds. It's not, it's not like social make you feel good stuff, which is, the problem because, social psychology and the massive female invasion into that profession is kind of degraded it a little.
I was just
for
wondering what the
those reasons.
feminine perspective on it would be, because our perspective that we just took on that is very masculine. It's very reductive. It's very rationalized.
It's
But
emotional, feeling heard, feeling
mm,
understood. And I'm not saying these things are bad. I think they're good for female patients. I'm a
mm,
very strong believer of what is good for male patient who's trying to work through shit in their life and what is good for female patient is very different. And, it's that thing of maybe we shouldn't be treating males and females like they're identical because,
mm,
boy, that Y chromosome is weird as fuck and we are definitely not identical. Um,
mm.
you know,
Yeah, because for guys, the debugging mentality, the debugging approach, I think, is a good one because it's very much like I've got this problem. I can't seem to do this thing right. I keep feeling this anger when this happens, and it's like that's a common sort of masculine red flag emotion. Where for a girl they might cry, a guy would get angry. It's the opposition response, I think.
yeah, it's
Hmm.
problem based.
Hmm.
For a guy, they're like, I have these problems. Help me fix the problem. And you go,
Yeah.
okay, let's look at the source of the problem. What do we can do about this? Whereas I think women, it's more like, I'm feeling this pain because of this thing in the environment. And the male response is always, let's try and fix that. Let's fix the environment. Let's fix your reaction. Whereas I think there's very often what women are looking for is like, no, I want to fix. I don't want to change the environment. Whereas guys, it's I have this problem. All right, let's change your life. We
Oh, the red pill.
we like we like fixing shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Um, Seeing as we're sort of going on this weird ramble of what we're trying to do, I feel like I need to give a brief statement about my weird personality.
Hmm.
I've been thinking a lot about this lately, about like doing these shows, and I'm going to do another one of my own. And why do I think that other people might be interested in what I have to say? And maybe a little bit of an explanation about how I am so all over the place. I was thinking about the openness part of personality, and I was thinking about observing people in my life who are not super creative people that are really defined. Because people who are not creatives, people who are not open, tend to be more conscientious and low in openness or creativity. And they like borders, they're very rigid, they like things the way they are, the way they should be. You know, their world is very certain. And I was thinking about perhaps the openness dimension in terms of personality is like a surface area or a volume of potential personality expression that a person who is lower in openness is able to inhabit less of a personality difference. Like they're very centered in one place. This is what I am. I can't really move outside of that. It's very difficult. And I have a sense that a person who is very creative or very open has like a massive potential area of who they are, quote unquote, who their personality is or their expression. And they're sort of, or at least in my personal experience, all over the place. One day or 1 minute I'm feeling this thing over here, I'm sort of playing in this wee space and personality and pushing this wee border, and then I'm all the way on the other side as completely opposed. And I'm over here, and then I'm that. It feels like the space of my potential personality, or the space of my personality, is far greater than I can inhabit at any one moment. And that I'm like shifting through it over time, not in a progression, but back and forth and all over the place. Like I'm a little circle inside a big circle and I move constantly. And I'll go way over here and rub up against all of these ideas and parts of myself I haven't seen in a while, then I'll be dragged back over somewhere else. And I get a sense that people who are not high on openness, the circle within a circle is closer together, perhaps to the point where the core never is outside. So they're always rooted in that one spot in themselves. Strong sense of identity, which creative people do not have. I don't have a good understanding of who I am because it changes so much. And I think that's interlinked with why people who are high in openness or high in creativity are, well, creative. They find things and they bring them back for everyone else because they're able to go to all these places and like find something and go, ha, look at this.
It's more than that, though. That
But
I don't think it's
also
just that you.
unstable.
Yeah, I don't think it's that you can go to all those places. It's that you can't not. It's almost
Yeah, I'm
like,
not in charge. I'm not in charge of that direction.
yeah,
I'm being dragged in what I'm in. If I have to bring it back to the neural net analogy before, a person who's low in creativity, who's low in openness, sorry, I use those interchangeably, the loop of nets of the neural net would be very well worn. This is my loop. This is where I'm at. These are my tracks. And I can touch wee information points along the outside as I go through the loop. Whereas a person who would be high in openness would be someone whose pathway is very, very long and multivariate all throughout the brain, and then maybe every now and then loops back. Or that isn't a routine loop. That is chaotically moving throughout the brain and touching on all these different things and not actually having a stable base of which to operate out. So if you think of the loop as the base of personality or consciousness, you could imagine someone with a tight and defined loop who's spinning around but can reach out to different parts as they're going, would have a good foundation but can explore. But someone who didn't have the good foundation would just be everywhere and not really have control over, what part of my brain am I touching at any moment. Perhaps more sensitive to inputs as well to disturb that flow, like not a
both inspiration and destruction.
yeah, it's not a well regulated system. It's a chaotic system.
Yeah, like I'll find myself having an
Creative people
idea
tend
for
to be very destructive.
very
So I
what,
can see
sorry?
that as well. Self-destructive. Like the link between creativity and suicide is off the charts.
Mm. Yeah, because I find a lot of project ideas come up in my head, and um, if I don't, I can write it out, and that sort of that relieves the pressure, but it doesn't achieve anything. But if I keep it in there, the pressure of the project just sort of rises and it weighs on me. It's like the like I'm carrying a backpack full of all my unfinished projects, and it gets heavier and heavier until I do them. And so I'll do this thing, or I'll get that thing, or I'll finish the antenna, and yeah.
See,
So
I'm like that with words.
mm,
I don't accumulate projects to do, I accumulate speeches.
mm,
I'll build up a thing, I'll build up a thing, I'll build up a thing, and it's like I need to tell someone. I need to go on a spiel, I need to
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it's off. And I can sort of somewhat do it by talking to myself to get it out.
I've got a friend who's all the way
And
on
then
the
it
project end of the spectrum.
condenses
You're on
and becomes part of me.
the speech end of the spectrum. I think I'm sort of in the middle because I've definitely got all these spiels and ideas and concepts and things that I've got that I need to get out. But at the same time, I have some projects come up, and a project you've got to sit down and work on for a while. You can't just sort of pick it up,
Yeah.
do a bit, and put it down. You've got to sit there for an hour and work it out and work out what sort of wire you're going to use and then measure it out and so on. And you've got to get into it. And I think that that's also a male brain thing, that the sort of, here's the thing that I am working on. Oh, it's dinner time. Oh, I forgot. Oh, well. And you're just in the zone. I think that's a more masculine, more male brain type way of approaching
Yeah,
it.
I'm not very good at that. Because I'm probably ADHD.
Mm.
Not sure. My attention is consistently dragged, and then I'm consistently dragged behind it, and then things that I was holding in short-term memory just get left behind.
Mm.
So it's very hard for me to sit down and work on a thing, but it can be very easy for me to spin together a great tale or a great concept that I haven't been thinking about in like 5 sentences. Just like, here's a thing I just thought of just now. Let me explain it to you. And then the way that I end up doing that is like profound or really well articulated. That's like, cool. That was not planned at all. And then I'm sort of sitting there. You know, I'd be a good teacher if it wasn't for all the planning. I can't do that.
Oh, there's an interesting,
Which
a
is
thing you might find interesting then.
very difficult to monetize. You know, if I want to make a career out of my great skill,
Dad
maybe
had
this, I
that,
hope.
and he was a teacher. In the sense of he taught aircraft engineering, and there were some instructors who would have their lesson planned out, and they would have all the points they had to cover, and it was basically a pre-written speech with slides.
Mm.
And Dad could never do that. He would have the topic for the day and a whiteboard, and by the end of the day, he'd covered all the important points. But how he got there was never known at the start. But people would ask questions, he'd respond, and there would
Yeah.
be a two-way thing. And he was a paid teacher, and he went that way, so it's not impossible.
That is interesting. Yeah, I feel like a good tutor, maybe. You know, they have like some rich guy's kids, and I was like paid to be a full-time teacher for like 5 kids or something. It's like I could do an amazing job, I think, but I don't think I could like write a course plan or build a structured curriculum. No.
You need the student.
Yeah, I need the interaction. It needs to be creative and generative. It can't just be. I abhor scripts. I can't deal with just pre-written stuff. Like some of the podcasts I listen to, every now and then someone will like read something. And like at the second that starts, I'm like, okay, I'm sure there's a great idea here, but I can't stand pre-scripted talking points. You know, I have a great issue with politicians for that reason. Why I would never do that if I ever found myself in such a position. Funnily enough, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. But yeah, I could never follow the kind of advice that is always given.
If you were assigned a speechwriter, they would either hate you or love you.
I would just fire them. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
As assigned. Yeah. You don't have a job.
Well,
You're paid to do nothing.
Yeah, that's the only way that you would get a speechwriter. It's like if they were assigned to you and you didn't have a choice. But then they would either be like, Let me do my job. Or they'll be like, sweet.
Yeah, this is great work. And then I just like go up there and yeah. I hated public speaking when I was a kid, but I feel like at this point, if I had to get up in front of a room full of people and just give a speech on a topic, I feel like I could just hit it out of the park. I'm not
Hmm.
sure why. I just have the sense of if I know it. Obviously, there's a lot of things I don't know. I'm not God. Um, but if it's a thing I know, like there was a bit on Top Gear a long time ago where um they like crashed a party about the environment or something, and one of them they had to like get up and make a speech to a room full of effectively billionaires who were like concerned about the environment, and they had nothing, obviously, and they played it up. But I had a moment of sitting on the couch of being like, I actually quite like to do that. I feel like I could whip up something on the spot. And then this thought in my head of being like, how the fuck, how are you this person now? You always hated that. I think I hated the social judgment, but you know,
Speaking of
there's yeah.
the social stuff, there was something that happened recently that got me thinking about a little bit. Because I've talked about being socially awkward, and I've talked
Mm,
about, or thinking that I'm socially awkward, which is a different thing. And now you have previously, now there's a paradox here that means I'm missing something, right? That you'd talked about how both you and your wife had seen me as, when you met me, as uh, someone not to be taken seriously, like someone without much depth and consequential. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. Not offended at all, just very interesting to me. Um, and
no longer the case, by the way.
oh, okay, that's a useful data point because the event that happened was that I'd been dropping my son off to go to my parents, and we do it at the parking lot of a pub that's halfway between the houses, approximately. It's they're about half an hour out of town, so it's a wee drive to get there. But in this parking lot, there were some guys, probably early 20s, trying to get a car on a car trailer. And they had a winch, but there was no rope in the winch. So it was a bit of a kerfuffle trying to get it on. And they had some strops and so on. So I saw from a distance them having some trouble with this because they were trying to push it to run it up the ramps at the back, but it wouldn't get up and then lift the. It was a whole mess. And so I thought, oh, I'll wander over and see if I can help. And I was dressed like this because I'd had a day at work. And in retrospect, I was thinking back on it, it's like, they took me seriously. I wandered up out of nowhere and they took me seriously. And like, I didn't have all the answers, but I had ideas. And I said, oh no, that won't work. And then try another one and like instead hook the strop up to the tow ball and then winch the car up with the strop as they sort of pushed on the car to try and get it up a bit further. And that got it some of the way. And then it's like, oh, well, what if we hook a strop up to the truck and you can pull it up? And then it's like, okay, that just drags the trailer and the trailer brakes were on and everything. So I said, okay, well, that didn't work. And what if I bring my car around and we'll attach my car to the trailer with another strop and then you can pull with your truck and we'll get the car on. And this took like half an hour to an hour to get sorted. But the fact that I was able to walk up and I realized, hang on a minute, they're all listening to me and basically doing what I say. I'm not ordering them around, but it's like they think I have a worthwhile contribution. That I'm. It's the being in charge that comes from someone thinking you're competent rather than you
Mm.
walking up and taking charge.
You were elected
Yeah,
in that moment, silently. Yeah,
yeah. And there was no
yeah,
deposition or no one to depose as such. It was just oh, okay, we'll listen to you. That's a good idea.
yeah. It's what authority should be.
Hmm.
Authoritative. Person walks up, say, oh, I'm going to try and help. How about we try this? It's not, do it or else. It's not like, oh, I have no idea, but maybe. It's a person who has the confidence and seems like they know what they're doing. To refuse would be, hubris. Would be, a sin of pride. It's interesting. I think clothes make the man is a big part of this. The way you dress, the way you present yourself, the way you hold yourself. The mannerisms, the words you use, these things grant respect. But I think there is, aside from all of those signals, facial expressions included, I think there is something that we can pick up on in the way someone speaks that you've referenced before about being out some kind of board game thing and saying something and everyone is silent. I don't know what that is, but there's a sense of there's information here. We're very, very good at human beings of picking up not just novelty in the silly way, but valuable novelty. That there is something unknown here that is somewhat shining. There's value.
Because there was another time that happened recently, which the speaking and everyone was silent thing was making me think of. That at work there were a whole round of VIPs coming over a series of days, and at one point it happened to coincide with when I was there and available at work, and what I was working on wasn't working very well, and need a brain break. And so I sort of wandered out to the workshop to see what was happening, and the boss was stoking the boiler, and so I started chatting to someone, and then it's like I ended up with a circle of people looking at me, like the half a dozen to a dozen people standing there listening to what I was enthusing about the technology, and it's like, oh, okay. And that was a little bit of a surprise, but it's what you were saying there of apparently there was something of value there.
Yeah, I think it's something to do with the story that we talked about before, or the idea of story. That it's not just a person who has the data, it's the person who can present it in a compelling story. I've had this too, dinner table conversations or whatever, you sort of having a one-on-one with someone. And I've had this, having a one-on-one on something and digging deep on something, and then I sort of look over and there's like 12 people watching, just silent. And it's the same example of the ring of people around you. You're not trying to take command of anything, but we're captivated by great storytellers. And great storytellers get at the heart of things that we want to know and do it in a way that's meaningful. They were all there to find out what was going on, and I'm sure your boss was doing a good job. But it seems to me that you have a gift in that nature. I often wonder if people like you or I more traditionally end up in sales and tracked up to CEOs, because that's what those people do. They're there to find out what's going on, and you are able to, on the fly, there's that sense of novelty, not scripted. We're very, very sensitive to scripts because scripts are manipulative. Whereas a person who is generating off the cuff a compelling story, a compelling way of communicating information, is someone who actually knows what they're talking about. Anyone can memorize something. It could even be something that they heard from someone else, like the people who never stop quoting. It's like, well, that's a cool quote. It's not yours. There's a hollowness there.
But then
But
if you
someone
have the
who's
quote and
able
some
to,
thoughts about it,
and it's bearing yourself too. In order to
mm,
stand in front of other people and generate something off the cuff, there's no defense. You are opening yourself up completely. Confidence in that, vulnerability, trust, these are things that we find compelling. And there's no mask, no manipulation, no deception. And there's valuable information and novelty. How could human beings not be attracted to that?
mm,
You know, in curiosity or sexual attraction.
mm.
That's what greater signal of a person you should be involved with or connected to in some way can you have? It's better than bringing down a deer and actually having a thing to share with other people. You know, if you think about our evolutionary history, yeah, the great hunters were important for a long time, but then came the time of the guy who's like making a trap or constructing a new form of hut. Someone who has something that no one else has had yet. You know, what is he up to? What is he doing? And if he's able to stand there and go like, "This is what I'm doing this," and and he's open and honest about it and not hiding anything and just off the cuff. You know, oh, I have a question about this. Oh, this is how it works. Those are the most valuable people in any tribe.
There was someone like that in a story I read. It was space sci-fi. The people in question at this particular part of the story were aliens in a Stone Age-ish culture. They had, I think they had spears, but they were extremely strong, high gravity planet, such and such. But the guy, this particular guy, he invented the bow and arrow.
Mm.
Like, yeah, they had spears, and he wanted a little spear thrower because then he could get birds more easily. And he was always thinking thoughts and so on. And he'd something had clicked in his head, and he'd invented the bow and arrow. And followed through that process of having that idea and developing it, and then he was extremely valued in their tribe because of that ability to make new thoughts. And then because of reasons, some humans ended up teaching them how to smelt iron and beat it into knives, because all they had were flint knives that they'd nicked. And a lot of skill and so on to make that, but then you compare that with a steel knife and you can make five of them, and you can sharpen them and melt them down and make new ones and so on. And for their survival, these humans taught them how to smelt steel, and he became sort of their expert at it. And he he had that value that you're describing there because he could bring worth out of the creativity back to everyone else.
That's the thing. There's a bit of a massive white pill for the modern day men versus women crap that's going on the women's side in there. Many people seem to believe that it's, you know, the having of a resource that gains the attraction of women. And for some people, there's a certain signal in that. You are doing well, you must be doing something right. Okay. Most people seem to think that it is the ability to produce resources. But I don't think it's actually that. You think of someone who has a position that they're not good at, but is put there for political reasons and makes a whole bunch of money doing it. That's not someone that women admire. And then you have the starving artist phenomenon. My contention is that it's actually successful integration of information foraging and creativity that is the primary signal of attractiveness of men to women. You know, you're exploring a new space, you're being creative, and you're generating information. You're generating ideas, you're generating patterns, art, music, expressions of pattern, or articulated patterns as in concepts, and then you're applying that in some way that makes our lives better. Accumulation of resources or creating something new that changes things. You know, a person who makes a better hut isn't necessarily accumulating better resources, but they're changing the paradigm. There's something about that spirit of creative play, making something new that the tribe hasn't seen before. And I think that's the spirit that is most attractive to women. Like in your analogy, it's not the guy who's the best at throwing the spear. It's the guy who's like, I'm going to get something to throw the spear for me. I'm going to trap that thing. I'm going to camouflage myself. You know, I'm going to make a bow. I'm going to use bait. Those are the things. That's so genius, and it makes all of our lives infinitely better.
Oh, there was a scene in that story where the guy he came up with the idea of a really, really, really big bow, and he asked one of the humans to help him with it. It's like, no, I can't do that. You need to work it out yourself. And then the human wanders off back to the other humans, and the guy follows quietly, and it's like, what's happening? Oh, such and such wants to build a ballista. Ballista. Okay, so that's what it's called. You know this thing. I will go ask another human. Yeah, and so they ended up building one, and it sort of blew up on its first use, but it worked, and I know this is a thing. I don't know what it is, but I know it will work, and
and I'll make it work.
yeah,
We're information gatherers who then transform that information into a pattern that's useful to us, or an explanation about the world, which would be music or concepts.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's not the getting of money or the most horses or whatever.
Which are often used as signals for that ability.
Yeah. They're signals that men use to evaluate each other's status. And then the women select based on what men think other men should be. The whole sexual selection thing is quite a bit of it is men selecting other men. You would be a good husband. You would be a good member of the community. You would be a good father. And the women pick.
I feel like that whole type of pattern is about 50% of it.
Yeah, it's shared. Like we as men will, in a tribe, choose which men should have wives and children and which shouldn't. And I think a large part, yes, the women are interested in the rebel person who's doing these creative things and creating the new system. There's obviously a lot of romantic story tales about that. But at the same time, if the guy is too far outside the male's hierarchy, like say, a womanizer guy who isn't interested in doing any work, but just interested in trying to like chat up the girls, tribes would just kill a guy like that. You're not productive. You're not helping feed everyone, and you're trying to like steal women. We're going to kill you. Whereas the guy who is, so take your traditional story. I think the How to Train Your Dragon movie is actually an amazing example of this. Of like scrawny kid in a culture of like super masculine men is shamed. You're not good enough, man. And then he like goes out and invents something that is fundamentally changes the whole culture, and he gets the best girl of his generation. even though he is completely opposed to all the other males. And the males wouldn't have approved of it unless the information worked. In which case they're like, you know what, actually you are all right because you did that thing.
Yeah,
So yes, you get our approval now.
there's those two
Because
scenes
if
in
you
it.
didn't,
At the start, it's like, we just need less of this. You just
this,
pointed to all
yeah,
of me. And then at the
yeah,
end, it's, we need more of this. You just pointed to all of me. Yes.
yeah, exactly. If his innovations hadn't worked,
Mm.
and he wasn't able to pull his weight, he probably would have been kicked out of the tribe. You know, you can go survive on your own in your forest. We're done feeding your useless ass.
Mm.
But so there's a dynamic there. It's not just one or the other.
Mm.
It's both when it's functioning properly.
Mm.
Make that note. We've had plenty of times in human history where it has not functioned properly, and it's been pretty horrible.
Yeah. I'm curious on the point you made that the impression of me being a shallow person no longer applies, because data points like that are useful and rare.
Okay. The initial assessment was a mile wide, an inch deep. You were a person who had a lot of ideas and played in a lot of spaces. You were like a super genius 8-year-old. Yeah, really smart. Yeah, you could have interesting conversations, but you know, not really someone to be taken seriously yet. Whereas now you have, I don't know, you have a sense of masculine energy, which is danger, strength, usefulness. In the same way we were talking about the compelling speech before, it's not something that's easily captured or described.
Hmm.
But now there's a sense of this is a person whose words might have consequence. Whereas before, there was something about you that was, don't really need to listen to anything he says. Because if I do or if I don't, it will make no difference in my life because he won't do anything ever. Something like that. Whereas now it's like, okay, someone like this should be listened to. Because, that's interesting. A child can play at many great ideas, and that's cute. But they're not to be taken seriously because they don't understand the hard practical realities of life. So imagine your child in a tribe. He's all creative and got lots of ideas, how we can change things and all this spiritual, that spiritual, whatever. The men aren't going to be interested. If that child grows up, he's faced the hard tests of reality. He is imbued with the masculine spirit. He's now a man. Either that play side goes away because he becomes concerned with the practical. You know, protect the women, make sure we don't starve. I'm going to be, a good hunter. Yeah, leave the childhood stuff behind. Or in which case he doesn't leave it behind, which shows that the seriousness of his character is now backing up those ideas, not putting them aside. Whereas before, it's like there wasn't an option to put them aside. So now the weight of your personality, the weight of the seriousness, gives credit to your ideas and your words. So now they're worth listening to. It's something like that. I think it's a status signal of a transfer between intellectual and creative child into, member of the adult male part of the tribe who's still got the intellectual and creative ideas, which means he stands behind it with his reputation. Something like that. And I get how that doesn't quite, it's a system that we have, doesn't really fit in the modern world that much. But I have a feeling that it's something to do with that. And whatever transformation you've gone over recently, I think to do with that night where you had your wee face slip thing.
I'll explain what that is in a
Whatever.
minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Your special guest can go and listen to that episode. Oh, it wasn't recorded. That's
No, it
right.
wasn't. Yeah, that
Such a
was too
shame,
personal.
although probably good. It was
Yeah.
kind of scary to watch, to be entirely honest. Anyway,
Mm.
something that happened around that time has, at least from my side, had the perceptual shift from that first category of, child to the category of like man to be taken seriously.
Mm.
Which I think makes sense given the transformations you went through about that time and the darker parts of yourself you had to accept and
Mm.
therefore understand more generally about the world.
Mm. Yeah, like I
Something like
was.
that. They're nice here, so I've done what I can.
Yeah, it's interesting how much of that seems to be. What's it? I'm not changing how I'm acting, but I'm changing where I'm coming to that from, in a sense. Like,
Yes. Mm.
yeah, because I'd been worried about talking too much because I'm thinking about it now, I'm doing it more, but trying to say less and make it worth more. Like, shut up and listen, Michael. Um,
Oh, oh. The mask that you had built up was an attempt to impress.
mm,
It was like a rote speech. It wasn't deep, it wasn't captivating, it was flat, like paper. And when you took that away, now your thoughts, even though all of the structures are still there, the thoughts are still there, they're coming from that inner voice that we unearthed, which is,
which at that time was only
all the way,
nominally 5 years
yeah,
old.
yeah, all the way down to the core of your being,
Mm,
which means, yeah, you're not speaking from the surface anymore. You're speaking from your core.
mm.
And I don't know, you feel the difference.
It's
The
interesting
mask
that,
was never something to be taken seriously. It was a mask.
yeah,
Yeah, and these things are not things that we know, well, can know. These things are not things that we currently can know consciously how we know them.
mm,
They're just things we pick up on for whatever, whether that's like minute twitches around the eye or something. We don't know how we pick up on them, but it's a thing that we do pick up on and it expresses itself in this instinct. Once
something
again, showing that, logic is informed from emotions.
something that sort of an attitude shift that I think I've noticed over the same sort of period. Like, instead of how shall I act, it's what will I do?
Mm,
And
yeah,
like
I like that.
in trying to develop the previously repressed, how do I say this the right way? Potentials for necessary violence, which can be interpreted in bad ways, but like if a drunk comes up when I'm out walking with my wife at some time, the ability to actively say, no, this is not the way the situation will go. I will make sure it goes the way that is right.
It's interesting you've spoken a lot about imagining these hypotheticals, which we
Mm.
have walked through, and I have sort of pushed you to, so I get why you do that a lot. But I've been thinking a lot more recently about, it seems I think you can only get part of the way by doing that.
Yeah.
Seems like coerced or forced and easy in a hypothetical situation like that, to say, yes, I would do the thing.
Mm.
Myself, I've found the greatest connection with that aggressive instinct comes from an exploration of how horrible things can get. And there's a surging emotion of like, no fucking way am I going to let this happen to, anyone again.
Mm.
Thinking about the brutality of history, there's a surge of anger that's like a defensive mechanism. I will stop this from happening.
This brings up something that, remember when you felt a need to talk the other day, so you called up?
Yes.
That, oh, how do I?
Hoping to get away with that one.
Oh, I'll leave out most of it, but the key sort of perspective difference that I got out of that, speaking without thinking, it felt like you were looking at things. You were looking at the enormous scale, the superhuman scale, and conceiving and judging on that level, and judging yourself on that level. Whereas I've had a lot of that. I've done a lot of that in the past, and I think I've circled back to a more, not 100% individual, but a more human scale for myself. Like I was right into the well, we had that night where I took a drink where we explored that in depth. The sort of the fate of the world is my fault type attitude, and healing from that. And so the like you talked about imagining the potential harm on a social level and the rage to act that it incites in you to do that. And I get a similar thing when I think about harm on an individual level. Like there was one that I ran through recently that, now when I say ran through, this isn't like, okay, I do this and then this happens and then I do. It's like, okay, scenario playing out, emotions, and then the actors play out their roles in
But
my head.
I just wanted to check that it wasn't a case of like logically thinking through a scenario and then logically going, well, I will do this.
No,
But
no.
here's a thing, and then the feeling comes.
Yes.
Not summoned by choice, but like it's there.
Because
Yeah.
I want to get to know those feelings so that if a time comes where they are necessary, I am not rendered helpless in their presence. I want to be. I want to wield the weapon, not be swung by it, if that makes sense.
It's interesting about the individualization of it. Say the victim in these imaginary scenarios. I don't generally individualize it in the past when I've thought through things. I suppose in a certain sense, the individuals are somewhat generalized to be of kin.
Hmm.
So they sort of like, they look like me, you know. Tribe members, vague and amorphous as they may be. It's almost always a defense of women or
Hmm.
children. And they look like me. And, shocker, human beings like defending people like us. But it's very rarely that I imagine like my wife, my child. I don't need to take that step for some reason. I recently discovered a brutal part of our history in terms of mating and like the pattern that it played out over a couple thousand years. And I didn't need to individualize that down to like, what if it was me and my family? It was just the fact that it happened to any person ever, both male and female, was enough to have that surge of feeling of like, we can't ever allow this or rage at existence that it's even possible.
Yeah, because I've been trying. I think for me, it's that I've been trying to move in from the edge of the pathetically pacifist edge of the scale. Pathetically pacifist because it wasn't a choice as such. It was I won't be malevolent at all. I won't be dangerous. I will be harmless and so won't be harmed. At least that was the plan. That didn't work out, and
they get killed first.
Yeah, but like what's it? The scenario as I play it out these days in my head is sort of, if a situation that requires it arises, like first to, like you described Matt Smith's Doctor Who as the best in your opinion because he had that the rage in there. It wasn't I'm angry all the time or I'm just trying to get over my terrible past of Peter Capaldi and David Tennant. It was,
and he was a good enough actor to make you feel it.
Yeah, it was. I have the strength to do things to you, and I have it under control. Don't test me because I don't have much control left. Just
barely. Oh, that's funny. It just made me think of a line that was used to describe one of my favorite racing games ever. And the line was complete control over the car, but just barely. Like, this is a thing that is incredibly powerful, and I'm holding on to it, and I am in control, but by like a fraction of a hair. And, not always.
Yeah. Like, there's a guy at the Aikido class I go to who's a nurse in the hospital, and he's had drunk or unruly patients who his Aikido training has helped him to pacify a bit. And I'm not saying that Aikido is the be-all and end-all martial arts. Like, if you have two martial artists in a fight, that's a very different situation to an unruly drunk who you need to suppress a little bit, which is frankly the scenario I would say I'd be most likely to end up in. But like he talked about having someone who I think was drunk at the time grab his wrist in I've got you sense. Like, I'm angry. And he just looked at this guy and said, let go. And because he knew exactly what he could do to this guy, he had the confidence that the guy just sort of let go. And when a drunk lets go, that's like, oh, something got through there. And so
you're less likely to end up in a fight if you have martial art training. The most likely people to get in fights are people who have no experience in fights.
That's a weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that sense of a person who has had fights and has experience or training, people instinctively know, not him. Not that person. Let's just, back up a bit.
Yeah, like that's the aura that I want to present. I want to be able to bring up of, I don't want to fight, but if you start it, I will end it, type thing. That's like, I know how to hit things that will hurt but won't kill you. Like, you might need an ambulance, but you'll be alive and your head will be undamaged, type thing.
That's very kind of you.
Well, the police will get involved after that, and then I want to be able to say that, look, he came at me, he ended up on the ground with bruises, and I called the ambulance. It's like I
Yeah, I
didn't
have a
want.
problem with that.
Okay, which aspect? The calling the
No, not
ambulance?
your thing.
Okay.
No. I'm very small and not very physically intimidating.
Hmm.
So the only way I've ever been able to get anyone to back down is to be convincing, and in that the retaliation would be unreasonable.
Hmm.
You know, I'm not going to be able to scare someone away by, you know, being a gentlemanly fighter.
Hmm.
I will win because I'm bigger and stronger and better, and you should not. I People don't like backing down to me because of my size. They
Hmm.
always feel like they need to push back because it hurts their pride to lose to someone who's three-quarters their height, whatever. But um, yeah, the only way I've ever been able to get around that is to instill actual fear of real harm. I will just incapacitate you isn't enough, unfortunately.
Hmm.
And that's something I've always been sort of concerned about. They get into a real street fight, even if I put someone down, they're going to be upset about that and they're going to get up unless I make it so they can't.
Hmm.
And, I don't, I don't want that, but I don't have no amount of confidence will escape that gambit, which is troublesome.
Hmm.
Particularly for, you know, any police questions that probably would follow.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, which is trouble. I imagine women often have that same thing. A woman who has self-defense training to defeat an attacker would have to harm the attacker far greater than just a guy who was of reasonable stature. Because
Hmm.
I think at a certain point, the attacker would roll over sooner to a more intimidating victim if he was rebuffed.
Hmm.
The less intimidating the victim, the more the person will think, no, I can still do it. I can still push. And therefore, the greater the cost would have to be in order for the person to, you know, give up effectively or slink away with whatever injury.
Hmm. Yeah. I feel like I need to say I have never been in a fight of any kind other than like sparring in a dojo where it's like where there's a bow at the start and the end. It's like I have never been in a fight. I just don't want to be useless if one should occur. I don't
Yeah,
want
it's
a
a good,
fight. Yeah.
yeah, which is why you should train.
Mm.
I think for anyone, if and the more people do it, I think the better the world will be.
Mm.
It's that thing about an armed society is a polite one,
Yeah, because you know,
and but we're not allowed weapons. So what's the next best thing?
yeah, because if you have some level of training, you're well aware of how it is possible to injure someone, and so you're like, I don't want to be injured like that. I know it is
And there's the
possible.
question of like anyone else might have in the days of firearms a weapon on them.
Yeah.
I might have one, so might you. So I need to be more careful with you than if I feel like I'm the big bad guy.
Mm.
And these days, I might have fighting experience and martial arts training, but so might you. You might outdo me. So let's not push this. I think the more also it suppresses that instinct. If you work out your violent instinct or your drive for competition, aggression, fighting in the space of, martial arts class or dojo or whatever, and most people did that, that drive wouldn't boil over and start
Mm.
becoming a street fight problem.
Yeah, it's like you're getting
Safe
angry,
channel.
go to a ring, get in a boxing ring, and beat up
Yeah,
another
we,
guy
we
who feels the same.
person doesn't walk around all day feeling like I've never got into a fight, I'm going to beat someone up.
Mm.
They're like, no, I fought heaps. I spar on the weekends.
Mm.
That drive has, a safe place to go and play. We have these drives, we have these instincts, we have motivations. Human beings just need to stop feeling X, Y thing is never a good solution.
Oh, that's been tried too many times.
Yeah, I know. If only men would stop looking at women in very short shorts in gyms, the world would be a better place. Like, oh, I'm sure. Never happening ever. So that's not the right solution.
There was a thing I saw recently.
Oh God, what was that line? Sorry,
Yeah.
I think it was CGP Grey actually had a line about wishing upon a star that human beings are magically better than they are is a terrible solution.
Yep.
Which is great. I love that. Just like, I have a problem. Let's wish for humanity to be better. Let's all change.
Yeah. Terry Pratchett had the same thing in his books. The Tiffany A. King story arc. It's like right near the beginning. It's like she's what was it? She sought out a witch, and so being somewhat intelligent, she went to the tent at the fair that no one else was going into, and then sort of poked a little bit of fun's the wrong word, but pointed out the caricatures in the tent and sort of verbally took them apart a bit, and then she got treated seriously. But what was it? She was dealing with issues in the story and wanted some serious advice from someone who actually knew what they were talking about, not just caricature. And what was it? One piece of advice she got was, if you follow your dream and wish upon a star and hope with all your heart, the person who just got stuck in and did the hard work will beat you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a line from a rap song, I think, that was luck tends to be on the ones in motion.
Yeah.
Which I like. It's like, you want to get lucky, you need to be doing something.
The guy who
you can get a lucky break, but you have to do the thing.
Overnight success years in the making. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 10 years to make an overnight success. There was a line about communism that was something along those lines. Not that quote, the earlier one. From the Mr. Jones movie. Just still one of the most brutal things I've ever watched. Highly recommend it for anyone, who thinks that socialism might be great. Go and watch that and see what happened. I've probably said this on the podcast, whatever. He's like at a bread line. He's finally made it to the Ukraine and got past all the guards and like had a whole bunch of adventures and seen children eating each other and stuff like that. And he gets to this bread line and he's desperate. He finds an adult, the first adult he's found. He's like grabbed them. He's like, what happened here? He's an English journalist, a real guy, real story. And it's this old lady, and she said, they thought they could replace the natural rules with ones they made up. That's it. They thought they could replace the natural laws with their own. And then human beings, being human beings, don't just magically be different than we are. And catastrophe ensued. On the topic of communism, very interesting conversation on the Peterson podcast recently that sparked a thing in me. One of these things of two fundamentally opposed ideas. Actually, what we need to do is unify them, which is basically the principle of profit sharing in corporations, but not equal profit sharing. Was a business magnate who over the course of 50 years went from like a single guy in a garage to something like 300 factories and 750,000 people worldwide employed. It's like the biggest manufacturing giant on the planet. And he did that because one of his first foreman who ran his first factory with like 10 people wanted to go and start his own factory. But he didn't want to lose the guy. So he said, okay, you go and start your own factory and I'll pay for everything and you take 1/3 the profit and I take the rest. And then he just did that a bunch and eventually codified it into a wee set of rules for his company where like management gets 20% profit, shareholders get 20% profit, workers get 10%, 7% is reinvested and like 3% to charity or something like that. You like a list of rules. Those aren't the exact ones. But the point is enforcement costs. You have a centralized economy. Everyone has to be forced to do everything. They'll be outcompeted by the free enterprise because people will do it. If you actually reward the workers of a company with the profits of the company, they're going to be very motivated to make sure the company does well. They're not going to be pilfering time. They're not going to be pilfering goods. They're not going to be, pretending to do a good job and just barely getting by to get their paycheck. They will see that if I work harder, we'll make more money, and then I make more money. I think that's pretty awesome. And the problem is being enforced by, everyone gets the same share and it's enforced by the state is not the right answer. But I could see under individualistic corporation level that could be a great strategy. Maybe playing around with the percentages depending on corporation, that'd be great. If it happened voluntarily and required no legislation, that'd be even better. The companies that shared profits with their employees actually did better and made more money for the shareholders. There's a way to integrate the two ideas. The spirit of communism is rich people have more than poor people, and that's unfair. Let's take the money and redistribute it. And the spirit of capitalism is ingenuity and free enterprise is the engine that makes all wealth to begin with. So let people do what the fuck they want to do. And there's your connection. There's your join. Full steam ahead with the innovation, with the engine of enterprise, and then rising tide actually lifting all ships by kicking down percentage of profits. And obviously scaled so the people who invested get more money, and yada, yada, yada. But then the rich don't run away with everything and then pay everyone the same rate that they have for the last 50 years.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting ride over the next wee while. Like, in the collapse segment for today, before we switch off because it's already 10:30 and we need to go to bed.
All right. Tell me the news. I haven't looked at the news in a long time.
There's no big things, but there's a lot of creaking continuing. Like the property market in Canada's starting to drop everywhere except one region. Like the house prices are dropping. The largest real estate company in China is on the verge of bankruptcy. There was a video I saw about how the US Treasury system could go bad, and basically if not enough people are willing to buy the Treasury bonds, which is how the government prints money out of thin air, or one way it does, then oh no, that's a different step. But yeah, if not enough people are willing to give money to the government, then suddenly, whoops, government ain't got no more money. And the derivatives thing, which is like, I'll bet that your bet, that his bet, the other guy's bet pays off in financial dollars. I'll bet that his bet doesn't pay off on that guy betting that the other guy's horse will lose a shoe or whatever. And it's like,
Not like cascading failures have ever been the problem in economics before.
Yeah. What was it? Warren Buffett, the famous investor. Um, don't know too much about him to be a fan or not, but he apparently bought a company that had a whole bunch of derivatives, and he already hated them, but he was like, okay, I think the company's good. We'll just have to get rid of the derivatives. And it took like years and millions of dollars to unwind all the derivatives in the company. And it's like each one is a complex legal contract. It needs lots of lawyer hours to unravel it. And so they just keep piling more of these on. And like in the 2008 crash, or leading up to it, or around that time anyway, they managed to codify in case law in the US that, what was it? They said the quiet part out loud that um, Goldman Sachs was part of the privileged class and therefore basically could commit fraud and was it forcibly acquire the assets of their clients, as in the bank accounts, without paying them anything for it, in order to pay out their secured creditors, who now included everyone with the derivatives in the whole system. And
Yeah. Serving the interests of those who put them there.
yeah, basically, and it's like, oh, fun. I think I'll go buy some gold or something like that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, they can't hack that. It's like they can do all their financial shenanigans, and when it all falls over or whatever, even if it's all still standing in a few years, gold will still be about the same price. And it's like, okay, need to buy a house.
Yeah.
Okay, here's here's enough ounces. I'll sell them, and
It's a good stock.
yeah, it's not the only one. A bit diversified
Yeah.
and so on, but
Diversify. Yeah. Have a foot in all the pies.
yeah,
One of them might pay off.
yeah, but more looking
You
to
can be
not lose than.
reasonably you be reasonably sure in like putting your money in the things that they put their money in, for that same reason of defending it. But yeah, if you're overly concerned and a cautious person, which you are, that's probably a smart move.
Yeah, yeah, but one of the things I want to invest in is the company I work at.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually thought about that before as well.
Yeah, you need to save some money first.
An early day, yeah. Yeah, it would take me like 3 months to outsave all the money you have, by the way. So just so you're aware, I'm doing fine.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. My current plan is to have the kind of level of business that my boss does in 10 years. I could save up enough money to have the investment capital to switch from being employee to employer. And rather than like trying to become manager, I can hire one. And then I can try and institute those policies of like, I'll give you a percentage of the profit and see how that goes. Go have fun and just see how well the farm runs. It'd be great. Yeah, it's nice being in an industry that's so transparent. Like there is a clear path to move ahead, and not just move ahead, but move from employee to employer. It's like a small business making industry. You can get this much money, and then you can get a contract with someone and employ some people, and all of a sudden you're on the business side of the equation. It's like part of the career track. If you want to go beyond manager and you don't want to go like the area manager corporate route, you can go to being small business contractor who does the one farm and employs some people. And that's a step that a lot of people take because it's really like reachable. It's actually something that can be built in. And then all of a sudden you're earning the kind of money that 15 years after that you might be able to put down deposit to buy your own farm. Like in a single lifetime, you can go from nothing to owning, a $10 million farm.
Yeah, I think one
And
of the
that pathway's
things.
open to people.
I think one of the things that's also like there is a temptation that's common in our society to think that and it's particularly in America as I understand it, but it'll have its hooks in here,
Mm.
to try and look rich or try and look like you're doing well. Like
Status.
have the status
Yeah.
symbols and that. But something that attracts me is earning well, living comfortably but small, and then you've got the surplus on top of that that can be used for saving for a house or going on some trips. Like, okay, I have this excess because I'm living small and comfortably and well, maybe some chickens and a garden for some nice food and so on, but it's like there's that extra capacity that, okay, now we can go on a trip, now we can go on a holiday, now we can do a month
Yeah.
of touring the North Island with the kids so that they can learn and see and so on. It's something
There was
meaningful.
a finance guy I was listening to recently who was talking about like how anyone can live a rich life. And yeah, obviously that's like, oh, that sounds great. Probably not true. But his
Mm.
point was actually quite accurate, which was if you recognize that a lot of the things you want to buy them for status.
Mm.
Once you realize that, you realize you don't actually really want them that much. And then after that, you'll realize that there's like one thing, maybe two, that you really, really like. Like for him, it was he liked staying in expensive hotels or he liked first class flights, something like that.
Mm.
And he's like, okay, so I will spend on that, but I won't spend on anything else. I'll drive my 20-year-old beat up car to the airport and then get on the first class flight because I care about one and I don't care about the other.
Mm.
The point of what makes you happy shouldn't be having the best of everything.
Mm.
Because at that point, you're just trying to signal. But if you're like a car person and you really like a nice car and you want a really nice car, then do that. But like, don't go out and drink every weekend and don't also buy the new phone every year and don't
Mm.
also spend all your money on subscriptions and go to lunch every day and
Yeah, it's like work it
pick
out
one.
and budget it. It's like, okay, that much is for savings. Here's a few
Yeah.
different categories of savings. Here's the short term spending and so on, and work it all out. So okay, this chunk of
Yeah.
money in that account I can spend guilt free because it's already been separated off and assigned.
That's the key thing.
Mm.
You spend guilt-free all of the money that you haven't put aside for savings already as a description ahead of time. This is
Mm.
savings, this is not. The not savings, spend it all you like. Don't
Mm.
feel guilty because you saved.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then realize, you should be spending on money on things that you enjoy, not on trying to impress other people.
Mm. Yeah, and being a bit of a warrior, I'd need a bit of saving buffer as an adaptive capacity. Like, okay, what if job was lost, or if rents went
Mm.
up, or had to buy a new car, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you should have a lot of money around. It was something he said as well, which I quite liked, which was you should have enough money just, in cash that it makes you a little uncomfortable. You should look at that pile of emergency money and be like, it's a bit much. That's how you know you got enough. If you're looking at that being like, oh, I should invest some of that, or I could go and buy this thing because that's so much money. I don't ever need that much. That's how much you should have
Mm.
because you can never predict the future. You think, oh, I'll need, this many months in case I lose my job. And, everything on top of that, how I can go off and be spent or invested or whatever. And then, World War happens. And all of
Mm.
a sudden, that's not enough. Or a pandemic. Or,
Yeah. Suddenly you need to be like,
yeah.
right, I'm leaving with the clothes on my back and and this small
And
bag with
this,
some
yeah.
gold. And I'm going to that country, and this lump of gold will get me across the border, and this lump of gold will get me someone's house as they're
Yeah.
running away, and so on.
Yeah, and oh bugger, I didn't have that fifth piece because I thought it'd be better in the stock market instead of
Yeah.
having in cash.
And this one will
You know,
save my child from some medical thing because I can afford to pay a doctor. Yeah,
yeah.
because
Let's not go into plans for the collapse. Every
yeah,
time you bring up these things, I'm like, yeah, like you're preparing for the apocalypse. It's not helpful, but that's okay.
yeah, yeah. I've acclimatized myself to it, so I've slightly desensitized these days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I probably just find comfort in being uh, very confident in my abilities.
Yeah, that's what I'm aiming for. That comfort of I know I'll be able to handle it.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
weird talking about money like this in my current financial situation. It feels both arrogant and accurate in a weird way because like I'm on the sole parent benefit and I have enough surplus every week to do that. I'm thinking of upping my rent by finding somewhere more expensive because I can afford it and want a better place
Well,
for my son and I.
and you're
And
not allowed to save any more money than you currently are, or you get your benefits taken away. It's
some of
not
it,
that you're
yeah,
like, oh, I could up my thing. It's that you're literally not allowed to save anymore, or you lose your benefit.
because I don't want to just go throw the money at a useless hobby. I want to use it for something useful. And if that's getting a warmer house, then yeah. And there's wanting a nice house for potential future partner
Yeah, I
who
suppose
hoping
buying
things go well.
buying assets doesn't like you couldn't just get a nicer car. That would
I like my
count
car.
as your calculator. I know, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just thinking in terms of like being smart with the money.
If it's non-cash
If you
assets,
were,
it
you know,
counts. There's technicalities to follow, but
mm,
my plan is to at the appropriate time get off the sole parent benefit by not being a single parent anymore.
a sole player anymore. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you can save all your life. Yeah,
Well,
be great.
then it would be a wee saving.
Yeah, yeah. Fair enough. Get a prenup.
I I'm not
Oh,
going to go there right now.
yeah. I'm half joking, but I have some thoughts about that. I don't.
Yeah, we should probably head to bed too.
We
It's
should. Yeah.
nearly 2.5 hours of talking, and it's
Prenup
20.
thing's a real modern problem,
Hmm.
and it's there's a lot of nuance there.
Yeah, you did say.
I think there's a good thing about that. I think prenup thing is like the paternity test thing.
Hmm.
If your partner's okay with you doing it, you don't have to.
Hmm.
You know, if you're like, oh, I'm thinking about prenup, and she's like, no, never, then you probably should have one. Same with like the like, oh, I can't want paternity test, whatever. And then the partner's like, no, you're not allowed. You don't trust me. Fuck, you should get that tested, bro. But if she's like, yeah, I get it, you know, you never know, and I want you to feel safe and secure or whatever, and it's like, awesome. I don't have to do it now because you're okay with me doing it. That answers the question.
Hmm.
Same with a prenup, I imagine, you know, potential wife who's like, yeah, I get it, you know, you want to be safe and things don't always work out, and I understand. I don't think you need it with a woman like that. There's a thing there, isn't there?
Hmm. I'm slowing down because my brain's wanting to go to sleep.
Yeah. Me too. It's just, yeah, tests that reveal crucial information that could be damaging, if opposed, suggest that there is damning information.
Hmm.
And if not opposed, then aren't needed to be done because there's not damning information.
Hmm.
That's a little close to the nothing to hide, nothing to fear crap, but
Best rule is probably do it anyway and just yeah.
well, yeah. But there's also that gesture of faith. I think
Hmm.
mentioning that you're thinking about it is the most honest way. rather than like, I want to do this,
Mm.
you know, because I don't trust you. Being like, yeah, I have these feelings, and like, would
Mm.
you be okay with this? And then the partner being like, yeah, I get it. That's enough, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. That's one of the rules I've got for myself now is like nothing will be hidden for good or ill, and that's both the sort of the things that you might think the white lie type things
Yeah.
and the I would feel like I was hiding something if I didn't say this, even if it actually turns out to be of absolutely no consequence. And
There's something there. We should end and talk about it next time. But
yes,
there's a thought
yes.
of, oh, I never got to it right from the start. Way call back to the beginning of the episode. The idea of revealing things too early by sending her this link. You want to reveal everything to your partner or potential partner so you can be actually intimate and trusting with them. But doing, telling them your darkest secret on the first date is not optimal. You're going to scare them away. You're not setting up the right boundaries. There's something wrong about that. It's a great filter, but there's also something to be said about there's a time and the place to bare your soul, and maybe doing that the second you meet someone isn't actually a good sign.
Mm.
Now, maybe 3 dates in, sure, which is probably about where you're at. I was just sort of thinking of the balance between holding things back for too long, showing things too early, and then the spectrum in between. I imagine different places upon that spectrum would yield different results in relationships, and then it would be a trade-off system.
Mm.
One end of the gambit having advantages over the other. Heavy on the filtering out, but also kickstarting a relationship and accelerating it.
Mm.
Like I asked about marriage and children on my first date as well, which would have been a massive filter for any woman who was nowhere near mentally capable of that. But
Yeah.
seeing as I wanted to do that anyway, that wasn't a problem. And because of that, we were married 6 months later, engaged 6 months later, and married 6 months after that. And I think it was 6 months after that we had our first child.
Mm.
Because we started based on that principle.
You sent me that the link to that book, 101 Questions to Ask Before You Get Engaged.
Yeah, it was just something I heard on a podcast, and the guy who wrote it was very captivating and very interesting, and listed a bunch of them that were great questions. And I just thought, like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly the situation he's in. He should go and do this because the guy had clinical evidence to show that asking these questions produced better results.
Hmm. Yeah.
And his attitude was very much the case of we're just two adults here trying to see if this is even possible to become a match. So let's do the filtering process real early. He said that he did this to 3 women, that he actually had a list of it, and he would print it off and give it to them, and then say, come round to my house and we'll go through it for like 4 hours and work through all the questions and talk them all out. And 2 of them, he was like, no, I'm sorry, this isn't clearly not going to be good, but thank you for your time, and I hope you find who you're looking for. And then the third one worked, and his wife, and they got married. And I've been together ever since. Which I just thought was great, and very much not what we do in the modern world. So,
That's kind of
did you
the.
get the book?
I know that which bookshop nearby has it.
Or is that the plan for her comebacking, return to the country?
Well, I'm not going to spring it on immediately, but it's like it'll be. My plan is for it to be there for the right time.
Dates, by the way.
Sorry?
He did it on first dates.
Hmm. Yeah, there were
Well,
probably.
he's in the same position as you.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a girlfriend. I'm looking for a wife. We may just be in the courting phase. We may not even be engaged. But this is the path I'm looking at. So your potential future wife either way.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said for approaching it with the attitude of, I'm working towards this goal of being married happily for years to come. What's needed to get there? Well, not getting somewhere that's then going to crash, right? It's like, I'm wanting to get there, not I'm looking for a nice time with someone and maybe it'll turn into more and won't it be nice and da 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 da, and then there's no deliberateness to that, and
Test driving the car bullshit. You're good enough for now until I find someone better or decide I want to dump you. Oh, I feel so loved.
Yeah, it's
no good. No bueno.
There's failing to plan is planning to fail type thing in a sense, but
I
also
like that. That's good.
But also that's not my quote. I don't know where it's from.
I know, but it's good. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also as you say, it's like there's a commitment needed, and you're like, okay, I want to commit to the right person.
Yeah. Is that you?
Yeah, and I'm optimistic, but part of building that commitment is asking the questions and knowing that the questions can be asked, because there will be more questions later. There will be harder questions to answer that weren't in any book. There will be things to work through, and that process, as time moves forward, not all at once, it's not a let's sit down and have an exam, it's the process of facing little struggles and working through them and knowing that the person can handle little struggles like that with you.
How long is she out of the country for?
The rest of this month and next month.
Okay. You could do 2 or 3 a night for her entire trip.
Well, if you're watching and you're interested, let me know. And
oh yeah, that's right.
Oh, I'm having to ignore the potential.
We do have actual people who watch now.
Yeah.
There is that, and I think I have shared it to like one family member, so that's also potential in the audience for me. Hello.
Yeah, we have to kind of ignore that, don't we? And it's just us having a conversation and deliberately remove filters, because that's the point of this.
Yeah, just sort of got to forget it. But you have to remember it at the same time, because you're speaking to the planet. Hello, Internet. I don't know. There's a weird cognitive dissonance there that has to be developed. I think it comes to me pretty naturally, where I'm both careful with my words and not at the same time. Which is interesting.
It's like being caring but open.
Yeah, being serious. You know, I'm not gonna make dick jokes. I'm having a real conversation, which is things that matter and things that are interesting. And yeah, a little bit of humor in there, here and there, but I'm not gonna go over the top. This is not me and mates on Discord. That's a very different thing, which honestly I haven't done since I was a teenager, and thank God none of that got recorded. I often wonder, we're in the age of everything's recorded and everyone's judged by everything they ever said, written on Facebook or whatever. I think we're very lucky that there isn't some kind of transcription record of everything that happened on Xbox Live in the early days, before, automatic AI filters and people getting blocked and banned. Because it was bad. There was a reason parents wanted to keep their kids away from online games, for good reason. It was rough. And, met other kids who went through that. And there's a connection there from having that history, but boy, if you wanted a place that was not PC, that was it. That was about as far away from PC as you could possibly imagine.
That was the goal by the sounds of it.
By the participants, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. I mean, we're the first generation to be like more conservative than the generation previous in like 100 years. My generation, not yours. Uh-huh. And we're the most opposed to political correctness and woke ideology, more than the oldest generation that exists.
That's interesting.
Like yeah, I love the stat. It's that you go way back to the oldest generation that's still alive, and they're pretty opposed to the woke crap. And then as the generations get younger, they're more and more in support. And then you hit Gen Z, and it's like complete opposite, complete opposed. Your generation is the most in favor, not mine.
Sorry.
We're the edgy rebels, and yeah, we have extremes at the end of our generation, as who doesn't. But the average is actually kicked more conservative and 100% anti-PC and anti-woke. You know, South Park and Xbox Live and the beginnings of the internet and old school uncensored YouTube was our upbringing.
Hmm.
You know,
And now there's 4chan and yeah.
yeah. There was all of that. Yeah, that mostly came out of our generation too.
I still find it funny how some Twitter people back in the day decided to do a raid on 4chan and go over there and say mean words to people.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it was like it was the Tumblr Wars. It was super lefty, feminist Tumblrs decided to go and invade, invade 4chan, and yeah, it didn't go well for them. It was massive retaliation, and they like took over all of their pages and ended up shutting them all down in the end of it because of how brutal it was. Yeah, don't mess with the weaponized autists.
That's an interesting one. Don't mess with the weaponized autists. Yeah, it's like
that's what they are.
Yeah, it's like what will they do? Wrong question.
Like the bike
what
lock.
won't they do?
Like the bike lock guy. You remember that? Oh, it was one of those early Antifa riots. Guy hit a woman across the face with a bike lock, and he was like head to toe black, ski mask, everything, with sunglasses on. And there was this one photo of him like doing a swing, sunglasses, full black mask, black hair, everything. And they ID'd him because it was filmed, and they were upset about it. So they sampled down the image to all the component parts, and then went searching through all of social media, and they found him, and he got prosecuted and thrown in prison.
Oh,
he was a professor at Berkeley.
Oh, yeah. When the internet decides to do something, it's like those people who find the precise location from which a photo was taken anywhere on Earth for fun.
Yeah, and then they just like they put the coordinates in the description, and people are like, "How the hell did you do that? This is creepy." And yet, for some reason, 4chan always comes back to being the source of a lot of these campaigns.
Yeah.
Like it starts there, and then it grows from there, and then it springs out to Reddit, and it springs out to other places, and then it ends up being this global thing. But then you trace it all the way back down, and it's like a small group of people making memes and taking it too far, and then all of a sudden it becomes a real thing.
Yeah.
It's weird how often they're the beginning of all of these storms.
Oh yeah, everything begins at the edge.
There
was a Tom Scott video. What was it? You stalked us. Well done. Please don't do it again. Where they'd gone somewhere in the middle of nowhere in America to film a solar eclipse, and it's like, okay, where are we right now? Find out for us. And then post it, and it's like zooming in. It's like there's a big arc of them across where the eclipse went, and so on, zooming in, zooming in, zooming in,
Yeah.
zooming in, zooming in, zooming in, and they're like 10 within 5 meters. And it's like, okay, you were
Yeah.
on the right side. You were within like half a meter of that spot, so you win.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the people who live in the internet are very strange, and they tend to affect a massive part of our culture.
Mm.
I'm not one of the people who will always say that's bad, but there's something there. Not sure what it is.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of removing anonymity from the internet, though. I actually like that.
It wouldn't
Having
stop.
to have your name on everything that you do. Reputation.
Hmm.
Well, yeah.
There'd need to be freedom of speech alongside that. Like, if it's you must have your name on it so you can be tracked down and arrested if you say the wrong thing.
No, like social consequence. Obviously, yeah,
Mm.
social.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all for socially enforced censorship.
Mm.
I just don't like the violence getting involved. You know, shun people all you like, just don't kill them.
Mm.
That's how we kept societies intact for like a very long time.
Yeah.
Was, you know, you have gone off the line, and now none of the women will sleep with you, and none of the men want to be your friend.
Yeah, which in a lot of cases
Helpful.
is fatal.
Yeah, or at least they just never have kids.
Yeah. We need to call this quits or we won't.
We do. My ears hurt so much.
Yeah. Oh. Good night.
Good night. Good night, everybody.